Thank you very much for meeting me here today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. Anything that Sergio is like, Luis, you should do that, is an honor to do. So, thank you
Muchas
for having
gracias.
me.
Can you please introduce yourself and tell me a bit about your background?
Yeah. Looking at you always, right? My name is Luis Salgado, and I am from Puerto Rico. I'm a director, choreographer, and performer. I moved here because I wanted to be part of musical theater, and all of a sudden I've been able to do so many stories within musical theater, both as a performer and a creator. So my life, I think, have been molded by the New York experience after I moved here.
Why musical theater?
I think musical theater is really one of the forms that people talk about how easy it seems. Like I come from like acting background. Like in Puerto Rico, I study acting, and every actor is like, acting is the hardest profession in the world, quoting Fame. And there was a little bit of a look down at musicals in a way, because I don't know, because the emotional stakes are given to the audience through music, and not necessarily through this like back and forth of two actors, whatever bizarre reasons people might have. But I always thought, even before really experiencing it, that it was the most complicated art form ever. And that in that relies its beauty. That it's not easy to find somebody that can act and sing and dance and stand on the stage and be truthful. And so musical theater made me fall in love with storytelling at its highest capacity. If I go to an opera, I feel like I'm limited by only the music, right? Because really the acting component is not always the priority. And if I go to a play, I'm engaged, but I lack the other layers of all these other components that can elevate the theatrical experience. Musicals have it all, right? In music, and even beyond, like the work that I just did with Sergio in Germany, Paramore, expands that idea to acrobatics, and you can go anywhere. You can do video projections. Musicals allow you to basically utilize every form to tell a story and move the audience to its maximum potential of emotions. That's why musical theater.
How did you get started here in New York? What do you remember about your first job?
Well, first of all, it's funny how I came to New York, because I started coming to New York just to take dance classes at Broadway Dance Center. And I always tell the story because Broadway Dance Center was the welcome home kind of thing. And teachers started to tell me, we'll give you a scholarship, just come, move here. And I finally did, and I got the scholarship, and I was like, if I get the scholarship, I cannot work, and I want to work. So I turned down the scholarship, and I started doing work study, which was I would come in and clean the mirrors of the studios in the morning, and then be able to take classes at discount prices. But I think that was the best thing I could do, because then I didn't limit myself just to studying. But as I studied, I could audition and look for opportunities, and within very little time, I started being able to get new projects. So when I first came to New York, I had seen the musical Aida, and the lighting, the costume designing, the choreography, the music, all of that made me fall in love with the form of musical theater. Little did I know that I was going to be able to do it. So my first musical, like big musical that I got an opportunity to, was Fame. And it was basically like the chorus line or the Staying Alive kind of like image, where 500 people are all around the block waiting in line to get to the auditions. And then the auditions were on the stage of the theater where you wanted to perform. And where there were 500 people, now there were 100, now there were 50, now there were 20. And at the end of the day, there were 4. And I didn't get the job that time, but they got me a call back and said, we just hired somebody that was with you, but we have like a private invited call. Would you come? And I was like, of course. I get there, and their private call is like 75 people, so it's not private. But again, where there were 75, there were 20, there were 10, there were 5, and I got the job that day. And that whole thing just make musicals be even more magical. When you're auditioning for a 2-actor play, you'll never go in a 500 people line. That Staying Alive experience is not that. It's not like that. Or that chorus line, or that whatever, Dreamgirls, or whatever show you want to call that resembles a little bit this idea of being part of a musical. So my first New York experience was very much like a movie. It was like all the elements that create that movie, and I got the job. And it opens the doors for the rest of my career.
Wow.
Sorry.
Sounds incredible.
Sorry. I'm like, "Ah." Yeah, it's funny. It's crazy. I love it.
So you started as a performer and then became a choreographer, I guess?
Yeah.
Or did you
Well,
do it simultaneously?
Both. When I got In the Heights was my first Broadway musical, and when I got In the Heights, Andy Blackenbuehler first called me to coach him within the Latin rhythms, and we started working with salsa and plena and merengue, basically all the rhythms that I could provide him with for the show. And after a few months of working together, our relationship grew, and it was like pretty obvious that I should and could be part of the show. So I started coaching him, then I became part of the show, and once I was part of the show, I became one of the assistants, and eventually on Broadway got the credit as one of the associate choreographers.
I love this show so much, especially Inútil. It's
Oh my God,
favorite
yeah.
song.
Do you know Inútil well? Yeah. That song for me, it's one of the greatest songs of the show because it resembles 10 different books of our Latino culture, but one in particular that touches my heart. It's called La Carreta, and La Carreta is a local Puerto Rican novela play that talks about this generational thing. So in my mind, Kevin Rosario, the father, evolves from Luis, the final character who departs to New York. So it's basically the same, right? So Kevin has Nina, and in my mind, Luis had Kevin. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
So it's like it connects in my mind perfectly the idea of tradition and culture and growth, of this desire to be something else while remaining who you are. And Kevin, I guess Kevin resembles a lot also Lynn's father himself, because Luis Miranda, moved from Puerto Rico to New York and studied and became a person of importance in the city and supported his son, and you see them together now every time. So I can see that, and I can see how Lynn can find truth in his own dad for this character, but I also know that Luis Miranda is so connected to Luis from this play La Carreta, so it all goes into this circle thing where In the Heights is a special show because it's real. Every character there is real. The abuela, it's a character that Lynn really had. He had her, and she would play the loro the same way that my abuela would, and so it really becomes so universal, a lot of these characters, and at the same time it's kind of so simple. The storytelling is so kind of frontal in many ways, although the style in which we created the show, it's so diverse.
I also love the motto, like paciencia y fe.
Yeah, patience and faith, paciencia y fe. And it's not only of the Latino community, but it's of every community that has a big necessity, that has a big want, that has a big desire to evolve. Sergio himself, like winning the Tony Award this year and standing on that microphone and saying, I came here as an illegal citizen, and here I am standing representing everybody else that has a dream. That is patience and faith. You talk about that, you see those things, and you're like, where's the difference between this fictional world we love to create and the real life that we all somehow experience? And I agree with you. The motto of Paciencia y Fe is eternal and universal.
And it's kind of heartbreaking, this musical, in a good way, because like I'm an immigrant too.
Yeah.
Like I was born in Belarus, and my parents immigrated to Israel when I was almost 11.
Yeah.
And I always kind of thought that like I belonged like neither, not Belarusian anymore,
Right.
not Israeli yet. And this musical, like you're both, like Puerto Rican and
Right.
New Yorker, for example.
And that, yes, and not only the sad or the dichotomy or the tension there could be in being an immigrant and trying to be part of something and belonging, but also the time period when it was done. Because if you talk about that show today, because of that show, there's a different sort of welcoming to especially the Latino community on Broadway. But at that time, there wasn't. And at that time, a lot of the shows that had succeeded representing Latinos weren't really Latino shows. And the ones that were had failed. So, in the heights, in the period of time that it was created, in the period of time that it succeeded to the level that it succeeded, being a prelude to the opening the doors of Hamilton, for example, or a musical like On Your Feet coming along, I think that it has a lot of merit to that quote-unquote sad feeling that you're talking about right now, and how hard and hardship of a time people of immigrant descent could have. And now maybe on Broadway the Latino community is more welcome than before, but there are still, you know, the Asian American community, or the Hindu community, or the Israeli community, having also the opportunity to have a voice in a platform like Broadway, you know. So it's like, it's wonderful, it's thrilling, it's heartbreaking, but it's also still, it's like a little gate where you can put a key and go anywhere following the formula of In the Heights. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also kind of reminds me, you mentioned in the interview that you love Victor Hugo's quote, "Nothing like an idea whose right time has come."
Yeah, there's nothing like an idea whose right time has come.
So it's kind of, you have to wait for it.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Or you have to make it happen, you know,
But
be the first one.
you just quoted another show, right? You just quoted Hamilton. You have to wait for it, or or I'm not throwing away my shot. And I think that's the other brilliance of Lin, that there's a dichotomy of those two thoughts. Who am I today? Am I the person who's going to sit down and say, nothing like an idea whose right time has come, meaning, quote unquote, I'll sit down and wait for it a la Burr, or nothing like an idea whose right time has come, I'm going to make this idea work, right? And then you go about action like Hamilton does. And I don't know the answer. I don't know that it's about being patient and waiting necessarily. But the fact that the idea, I feel like I've been part of things that the idea is 10 years too early, often, but I'm still 10 years, in 10 years I'm still around when the idea succeeds, you know? So, it's interesting to me, this debate of, do you sit down and wait for it, or do you stand up and take action? I don't have the answer.
You also mentioned in that interview that you're a fan of training methods like Meisner, Viewpoints, and Suzuki.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, how did it inform your work?
You did some research, huh? First of all, I'm gonna start with Viewpoints and Suzuki. Do you know them?
Not really, not enough.
Okay, so Viewpoints, it really comes from, Viewpoints really comes from a modern dance movement. And in order to create movement, it deals with time and space, and I'm kind of narrowing down the elements. There are mostly 6 viewpoints, but time and space are like, I'm right now in time and I'm making a circular motion in space, right? And now space calls me to this side. So now I relate, whatever it is, space is dealing, and my time now is tempo, and I'm going to slow down time, right? So it creates, now this is a shape, which is another element, right? And I can go on, but it deals mostly with the relationship of physical time and space. When you look at musicals, you can break down musicals in time and space at any given point, especially because there's music, right? Suzuki deals with the idea of conflict. In my mind, this is my reinterpretation of Suzuki, deals with the idea of conflict through physical work. So the physical struggle that exists allows you to understand or come closer to the physical or intellectual struggle of any character, right? So then here's the criticism to musicals, that maybe the acting is not always the priority. I have found a way to not necessarily spend, 3 months on table work intellectualizing the dilemma of a character, but to come to the dilemma of a character through physical work. And so I can achieve what sometimes you achieve in 3 months of table work with a physical experiment and get an actor closer to feeling connected to a certain emotion or to a certain feeling or to a certain understanding of something, because I just physically experienced that in another layer, in another type of way. Am I making sense?
Yeah, it's really so provoking.
It's so provoking, and it provokes the actors, and it provokes my creation, my physical work creations, and so that is in a nutshell through my head why I fall in love with those two ideas. I study often at City Company these two techniques, and I never use it pure. I kind of reinterpret what it does to me, and then how can I trigger those things in another actor. That's a thought. And then Meisner, you know, people, the basic of acting, Stanislavski, Meisner studied with Stanislavski, but Meisner kind of says, I'm going away from sense memory, and I'm going to use the now memory. So our conversation, you're very patiently listening to everything I say, and your body's reacting, and your face is doing things, and you're alive. Meisner utilizes what you're doing right now to be sort of the beginning method of your acting. So you create emotional senses based on today. Right now we're here outdoors. There's a girl here eating a watermelon, and you know it's cloudy, but not cloudy like it's going to rain. All of these things give me a real emotion. I utilize that reality, sit down and listen, and allow myself to be triggered by it. So all of those elements become elements that I think are very useful when I'm making musical theater, and I have adopted them and in my own way use them as a director or as a choreographer or as an actor.
So interesting.
Thank you.
I was wondering, how did you meet Sergio Trujillo for the first time?
Sergio, it's like, I was going to say it's like a father, but I also think Sergio's like a fairy godfather, you know, where Sergio came to my life when I was doing that first musical that I just talked about, Fame. People were telling me that I needed to audition for this new musical that was coming up called The Mambo Kings. I asked, what kind of musical is that? It's like based on the movie, it's a Latino show. And I was like, I'm not sure I want to do that because I'm already Latino. I come here from Puerto Rico, you know, like it's kind. I in my mind, in my ignorant mind, I'm like, it's easy to me, and I want a challenge. Like I wanted to do whatever Desmond Richardson was doing, or you know, I wanted to do whatever hip hop challenges that wasn't necessarily the first go-to in my body. I wanted to do all these other things, and I thought at that time that my Latino experience was already in me, and that I didn't need to be part of that search through the Latino experience. I was wrong, and Sergio, I go to this audition, and the passion of Sergio Trujillo is leading that audition, and it's making me feel things because he is Latino, and it was his first Tower Broadway musical that he was going to choreograph as well, and he was very, very passionate about it. And I remember I auditioned with this wonderful, talented dancer, actress, Karine, she's French, and we literally stopped the audition. Like people went to the side to watch us dance, and it was that alone was such a empowering experience that I fell in love with Sergio right there at that time. Unfortunately, the show didn't make it to Broadway. Thanks to Sergio, I knew about In the Heights, and I became related to the show. And then for a while, we didn't share a lot of time, and I was doing my third musical on Broadway, Rocky the musical, and on opening night, Sergio came to the show and said, I have your next show. And I was like, what? He said, I have your next show, you and I have something to finish. And he had invited me to be part of On Your Feet, which turned out to be kind of the thing that led to the thing that led to the thing, because when I left On Your Feet, Jerry Mitchell offered me to direct On Your Feet in Holland. Then Sergio saw me as a director with better eyes because he knows me as a dancer, and then he calls me as his associate director for Paramore. So it's been a long journey with this wonderful, inspiring human being that I am nothing but proud of him and his work, and to see him win the Tony this year was like as if I had won the Tony.
He's so unbelievably like kind.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to interview some choreographer, and I had the audacity to email him on his website. And the very next day, his assistant replied like he's too busy, he's abroad right now, but he offers to connect you with one of his associates. Like, would you like to interview one of them? And that's how I met you.
Very, very kind, very giving. I have a non-profit organization, and Sergio, for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, has been one of our biggest fundraisers. He comes on board, and his assistant helps him, and they knock on all their friends' doors, and they get, you know, $10,000 a year to help us help our kids through the arts. And he's right now, I think, taking a role after winning the Tony. He clicks even deeper with his responsibility as an artist and as a spokesperson of our community. And I think there's a lot of Sergio to come, you know, both on the Broadway field and on the social elements, with all the potential, with the kindness you're mentioning, with everything that he has to give.
What was it like to work with him in Germany?
Intense. You know, if there's something I learned working with Sergio, is that you can never be too prepared. This guy, Sergio Trujillo, I don't know how he did it, but he basically did not sleep. And I was there for an entire month on his behalf because he was here working with Ain't Too Proud. So I was directing and choreographing there while he was directing and choreographing here. But that didn't mean that he just disengaged, that he was going to do Ain't Too Proud and that he wasn't taking care of everything that we were doing in Germany. He really was 100% in both places. And I remember that he would come home from tech 11, 12 p.m., midnight. And at that time, he would study the videos of what I had done that day in Paramore and send me pages of notes and comments and thoughts of how we can continue to make it better. And then he will go back to Aim to Proud and come the next night and do the same. So it was one of the most inspiring and intense experiences I have had. And at this point, I've directed quite a few shows. But to be an associate for Sergio was kind of like, it really was like my graduation. The amount of expectation there was daily to the work at hand, and the amount of commitment, creation, passion, ideas, suggestions that he brought to the table daily, I cannot compare it to anything.
We have 6 minutes left. Is there anything you would like to talk about?
I could go on. Let's start by saying that this is fun, and we've been talking about a great mentor, so I'm okay to go on. If you want to go on, if we only have 6 minutes left, what would I share?
I mean, I would love to stay. I just know that you're so busy.
Let's go on. Let's not cut it short. This is good.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So, what next?
Well, you mentioned R.Evolción Latina. We can talk about that more. How did it start?
So R.Evolción Latina actually started from that experience of not making it to Broadway that I first had, and how it affected that comment that I just said to you a little bit ago, of thinking that I didn't have to work within the Latino experience. And at that moment I realized that I had to, that I had a responsibility to do so, and that by doing so I could open the doors to so many more people to feel empowered of being who they are, of embracing their language, their accent, their heritage, their music, their dance, etc. And so we started by creating inspirational interviews. We interviewed Lin-Manuel Miranda, we interviewed Priscilla Lopez, Eliseo Roman, Andrea Burns. We did a whole thing about the people that at that time were daring to explore the fields that until that moment were not explored as deep as they are now. And we can go deeper. And that one thing led to another. Broadway Cares opened their doors to us. Michael Balderrama and Gabriela Garcia co-founded the organization with me. So they're both Broadway performers. And so became a kind of a Latinos on Broadway kind of a movement that then led to teaching very young Latinos around the city, that then led to traveling to Mexico and Peru and Colombia and Argentina, And that opened the door to producing and doing a lot more to empower and give access to the Latino community, whether they are artists or not, to feel that they are part of something and that people are voicing their stories. They're like come from away, like every field in the world can be a story that we tell. And of course, the Latino experience has so much to offer in that storytelling approach. And so although R.Evolción Latina is not a producing company, it echoes the voices of a lot of communities through arts, and we've been running for 11 years now. Like I mentioned, people like Broadway Care, Sergio Trujillo, among many other great artists supported. Ana Villafañez, at the time what we were doing On Your Feet, was one of our big voices as well, and so on and so forward. I think every show that I am at, there's always people that joined us and support us. And right now it's about continuing that legacy and opening the doors for new generations to feel empowered in different ways. There's always a battle to win. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, 2 years ago, Puerto Rico suffered the Hurricane Maria thing, so we jumped on that wagon that's supporting Puerto Rico. We travel there consistently. We gathered the Latino artistic community of the island, and through their work went to different towns and inspired them. There's many different ways. When in Mexico there was an earthquake also 2 years ago, we sent funds there, we sent artists there. It's a very proactive, empowering organization that we do everything as much as we can through the arts. And I also run Salgado Productions, which is mostly my producing theater company.
So you're a performer, a director, a choreographer, a producer. How do you balance these different hats?
I don't know. No, I'm kidding. Learning from people like Sergio, I would say, actually. Balance is the thing I think we live for. I don't know that we will ever find balance. And the way that I try to balance is by looking at a map of dates and saying where I want to focus when, kind of like, okay, this year it's all about directing and choreographing, and I'm going to dedicate that, and I'm going to say yes to those type of projects. Next year I want to go back and perform again, and I don't want to limit myself from that performer that I am. So I'm basically like that. In that 7 months ago, like from December to August, I was like going non-stop. Let me stop, be just with my family, and now that's what this time is about. And so I think balance. I was just recently reading the book, The One Thing. Have you ever heard of that book?
No.
It's a great book, The One Thing, which I'm incapable of doing one thing. But in that book, I think he explained well to me what I've always tried to explain about the idea of balance. I often say to people that balance is this, and I never like this type of balance. I like this type of balance. So he rephrased it in his book in a way that I understand it, maybe it will make sense, is that it's not about balancing, it's about negotiating. What's the word he uses? Counterbalancing. That as you're heavy on this side, I need to find immediately ways to counterbalance that side. And I think that that's how I balance it. I go super extreme on the things that I truly love, and then try to counterbalance it with the things that I need to have.
I'll definitely read that book.
It's a great book.
What's the best advice you have ever been given regarding work?
I think to be myself. Yeah. I think the best advice has been to be myself. And I don't know that anybody sat down and said, you got to be yourself. But it was more a matter of, meeting people like Sergio, meeting people like Maria Torres, meeting people like Maria Liz Molina, Jesus Aponte, and meeting Desmond Richardson, and seeing in all of these individuals that they are mostly successful because they dare to be who they are. And that's kind of a secret advice that I learned without ever anybody saying, you gotta sit down and be yourself. No, it was more like, shit, look, each of these individuals is 100% themselves. And again, I think the confrontation with myself came early in 2004 when Mambo Kings didn't get there. That was the moment when I said, shit, I have to be myself. And I think that has definitely been the best advice I ever received from the overall scope of the arts. Because again, if you study my career, being myself brings me to everywhere I've been. So.
What do you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Say it again?
What do you wish you knew when you were just starting out in Puerto Rico?
Wow. I wish I knew that I was capable. You know, it's so easy to see yourself in like a small island and like think. Like, I remember looking at the Olympics, the 2000 Olympics. Since 1987, there were brochures in Puerto Rico that were talking about the 2000 Olympics. And that just sounded like such a far away, impossible thing in my mind. It was like, sure, the brochure is there to inspire me, but it's so far away that who am I to want to be in the 2000 Olympics? You know? And I think that's true in any place you live, you know? Like, who were the people from your town to save all the world people that ended up arriving there when unfortunately the event of 9/11 happened? Who were they not to be the saviors of all these humans? You know, and so who am I not to accomplish the dreams I want? I think that's what I wish, and I also think that's why I share so often as an educator Marianne Williamson's poem Our Deepest Fear, because in it she talks about it. She says our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure, and it is our light, not our darkness, that most frighten us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous, but actually, who are you not to be? And so that's just kind of the first paragraph of that poem, and all that there is to say there. Like, we're often putting limits in our capacity, and I wish I knew younger that I should think without limits.
Wow. I guess that's why your motto is dare to go beyond.
Dare to go beyond. Yes. So that's that.
Yeah. Is there anything you would like to talk about?
No, I just want to say thank you for taking this time. Thank you for doing the work you're doing. Like I mentioned, R.Evolción Latina started with interviews, so I see that you're carrying on the legacy of making interviews to inspire people, to give people tools. So I want to say thank you to you, and thank you to everybody that supports what you're doing right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salgado.
Thank you.
This is the end of the interview.